Have you ever stopped and wondered if an economy could run on something other than just profit and pure self-interest? Well, today, we're diving into a pretty radical idea that says it can. It's called Kingdomnomics, and it's a framework that tries to build an entire economic system on a foundation of faith. Let's get right into it. Just think about the forces that seem to drive so much of our world. The source material for this kicks off with a really bold question. Are those forces mostly things like greed, pride, and lust? And if they are, could there possibly be another way? That question right there, that's the launch pad for everything we're about to explore.
So that brings us right to the big question, doesn't it? What exactly is Kingdomnomics? Let's break down the core definition.
Okay, at its very heart, Kingdomnomics is defined as an economic system based on the grace of God through faith in Christ Jesus. Now, this isn't just about making a few small tweaks to the systems we already have. No, this is a framework that's designed to fully merge economic activity with spiritual principles. It's literally about putting faith into financial action. And to take that even a step further, the founder calls it the King's Economy. The whole point is that it's supposed to operate completely outside of what we think of as normal human ideology and assumptions. It's being pitched as a total alternative to the secular economic theories that shape, most of our world. All right, so that's the big picture idea. But what does it actually look like on the ground? How is it supposed to work? Let's get into the core principles. The whole framework is built around 5 personal resources that are called the 5 T's. And they are your tongue, your thoughts, your talent, your treasure, and your time. It's basically a really holistic view of everything a person has to give. What you say, what you think, your skills, what you own, and how you spend your days. So you use those 5 tools, but for what? Well, the goal is to achieve 3 very specific outcomes in the economy: righteous production, peaceful distribution, and joyful consumption. The idea is that every single piece of the economic puzzle, from making something to sharing it to using it, should line up with these positive ethical principles. And you can probably see how this whole structure creates a pretty big contrast with other ways of looking at the world. So let's look a little closer at what makes this specifically an economy of faith. And this is where the core philosophical shift just becomes crystal clear, right? Where traditional economics might see greed or, rational self-interest as key driver, Kingdomnomics puts generosity in its place. Where pride might be the thing fueling competition, it champions humility instead. It's a fundamental rewrite of the motivations behind why we do what we do economically. Okay, so this all sounds really compelling in theory. It's a huge idea, but is anybody actually doing this? Does it exist out there in the real world? Let's take a look at the mission in practice.
So, is it just a theory? Well, according to our sources, nope. The real-world, practical application of Kingdomnomics is actually embodied in an NGO. It's called the Good Works Global Mission. This is where the philosophy is really being put to the test.
So who are they helping? Well, the mission's focus is aimed squarely at the most vulnerable people in the community. We're talking about orphans and vulnerable children, the needy, adolescents and youths, and women and the elderly. It's really a broad community-wide support system.
And the way they help is super practical. They're focusing heavily on education and empowerment through things like school outreaches, workshops, seminars, and they're even providing scholarships for critical exams. That's a direct investment in people's futures.
But every big idea has a starting point, and every mission has a leader. So let's shift our focus now to the pioneer behind both the philosophy and the actual practice of it. The person behind both the philosophy and the mission is a man named Mr. Alexander Amuche. And his background as both a missionary and a school leader with training in biblical worldviews really gives you the context for where this unique, faith-based approach to economics comes from. And honestly, Amuche's own words really sum up the whole grand vision. He describes Kingdomnomics as a scriptural strategy for good stewardship of resources and for creating what he calls citizenship of heaven on earth. That's a big, all-encompassing goal, which at the end of the day leaves us with one final, massive question. If an economy can be driven by things like greed and pride, can a personal philosophy, one that's rooted in things like generosity and humility, actually redefine it for an entire community? That is the ultimate test of Kingdomnomics. Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.